Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Sid.
And my name is Ella.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Get Fresh with Consent. Today we have two very special guests. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves today?
Yeah, sure. I'm Brodie. I'm the manager of the Responsible Men's Program at YFS in Logan.
And I'm Sophie. I'm the team leader at Men & Co Services in the Redlands.
To start off episode 3, season 2, we will be chatting with Sophie and Brodie about queer relationships, whether that's friendships, partners, as well as domestic and family violence, and what that might look like in those relationships.
Is there like a myth or a fact that you often hear that you feel like the community needs to be debunked about?
I think there is still that myth that domestic violence is a heterosexual issue, or it's between men and women. It's gendered violence against women, and certainly if that's an attitude that you've taken on, then you might experience violence and not recognise it as violence. If you've got this image in your head that that violence is between men and women, then what I'm experiencing isn't true violence, isn't real violence, or it's not going to be taken seriously. So if you've got that myth, in that attitude in your head, it can really shape that experience of violence.
Yeah, and unfortunately there's still a lot of support for that myth. Like a lot of the, videos and kind of advertisements around like, oh, this is domestic and family violence, this is the support you can get. We're still seeing like the picture of like, the woman with the black eye and the man kind of leaning over her. So there's still, I don't think if you haven't like worked in this space or you haven't had to support someone who's, in a relationship where someone's using violence and abuse, it can just be something that completely flies over you. It's just not something you've ever come across before.
And I think with that, there's this idea that there's not a power imbalance because, we're both men, or there's not a power imbalance because we're both women. And understanding that power is quite nuanced in queer relationships. There is a gender element, but there is also, who has social capital in the queer community, who, if you're going to isolate someone who's got the most friends in the queer community, like there's those kind of power. There's age, it could be a power dynamic, class, power is just a bit more nuanced, but it is still, DV is still about power and control, and that is still present in DV and queer relationships. It's just maybe a little bit more complex.
Yeah. So my understanding is having that myth, I guess, of DFV only affects heterosexual relationships really discounts the experiences of victim survivors in queer relationships. Is that something?
Yeah, and I think it's then going to impact of when you're seeking out support, whether it's, your guidance counsellor, whether it's someone at school, whether it's your parents, whether it's, getting to the point where, police are being involved and that myth isn't, as Sophie said, it's supported. It can, and so that's what the work that we need to do really, is being able to make it clear that whoever you talk to about your experience, it's validated, that yes, you are experiencing domestic violence, that it, understanding that, looking at those experiences being controlled and being isolated. And, I think it's also important to understand how the experience of domestic violence within the community is often about their identity. The violence is shaped by homophobia and transphobia. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, those different tactics of abuse.
Yeah, so, what we see in the queer community that doesn't often exist in the same way outside of that community are some of the tactics that people using violence might choose because they know the environment around this person might have some riskier elements because of their identity. So, if they are aware that this person might have like quite a homophobic family, or there are people that this person is frightened of because of their attitudes towards the queer community, well, if you're trying to gain power, you're trying to control someone, something that person might choose to do is weaponize that and actually go, well, you need to stay in the relationship with me, you need to do X, Y, Z, otherwise I'm going to tell them that you identify as this and what will happen to you. Like that doesn't happen the same way in straight relationships or for people who are not trans, because unfortunately there's some people who are very ignorant and very dangerous in society. And if you are really looking to be abusive, controlling, to put limitations on where that person is safe, one of the ways that you can do that is by making sure that doesn't become a safe space for them. We also see things like a lot of questioning of identity. So, you know, when I was supporting a friend who was trying to get out of a really unsafe relationship, one of the things that she described, her same-sex partner was doing a lot of like, are you sure you're a real lesbian? Are you sure? And it was incredibly damaging and quite frightening for her because she spent so much of her emotional energy just trying to work that out before the relationship, and to have someone she trusted and loved continually undermine that or poke holes in it. She's like, well, I get that from community in general. Like I get that out in the world. That person that she wanted to be trusting and respectful was not that. That kind of tactic around really like poking at vulnerabilities. It's not unique maybe to the queer community, but it just looks very slightly different.
Yeah. It sounds like the intent of controlling and abuse is still the same, but the tactics and I guess the levels that they can, strategies that they can use are completely different. But the intent is still there.
And I think people also, when we think about DV and queer relationships, it can still look like a man and a woman. A boy and a girl. It can still be a bisexual girl dating a straight boy who is completely mocking her sexuality and her experience of sexuality. You know, so it's not one size fits all. You know, with a queer relationship and what that looks like.
I like the word that you used, weaponizing. That's kind of like what it is.
And you know, and there's two kind of things. There's the side where you can play on that fear of an unsupportive family and being able to, you know, threaten to out and things like that. And you know, and the family might be unsupportive, and that's you know that is a fear. And then or the family actually might be completely supportive. But how do you know as a young person until you're out? Like, how do you know? And and I think, you know, it's really hard for parents to think, you know, but I am supportive, you know. I think, you know, parents and schools need to be on the forefront of saying, if you do decide to come out and, you know, transition at school or come out as queer at school, we have supportive policies in place. You know, because otherwise, if a kid is saying to another kid, if you come out, if I tell that you're out, you're going to get expelled. It's a religious school. How do you know you're not? Like, you know, you don't. Yeah, exactly right. So I think, you know, it's a fear that sometimes is grounded in reality, and other times it's not. But you don't know until you actually go through the experience of being out.
And threats don't need to be real to be effective. That's the really scary thing about this is if someone tells you something long enough, then actually it doesn't really, at the end of the day, everyone else can tell you, no, that's not true. But if this is someone who you trust on some level to give you the right information about what's safe and what's going to be comfortable for you, it doesn't actually matter if it's reality or not. It's whether or not it's believable. And historically, a lot of those fears have been very justified.
And the other element of it is, say you do have a very unsupportive family, or you might actually be experiencing violence in your family of origin, and you've got a current partner who is actually incredibly supportive of your identity, was the first person that you've come out to. You might be transitioning your gender, and they, you know, completely love you and support you, and they're everything for you in terms of your identity, but they're violent in other ways. And so it makes it so much harder to leave that relationship because they're the only person that's actually been supportive of your identity. And so even though, so not talking about threats to out, you already are out, you've got an abusive home life, and this is one person that actually supports your identity. It's just really like you see that barrier to want to leave the relationship. So there's two elements there. It's like they actually are threatening to out you, or you're out and you're experiencing violence because of that. And they use that as a way of, well, you're never going to get any better than this. Everyone else is unsupportive. You're never going to find someone who loves you like me. So therefore, it's okay that I do this, this, and this. You know?
And a lot of the kids that I used to work with would talk about, you know, this is the person who taught me what it's like to be in a gay relationship, because this is the first time I've been able to be open and actually be with someone that I actually am attracted to. And so they were still learning like what was okay in that kind of relationship, what wasn't okay. I think it's really important that, you know, we talk about some of the similarities too. It doesn't matter if you are in a same-sex couple, heterosexual couple, that you're part of the queer community or not. There's some things about unhealthy relationships that are pretty universal. And we can still say, yeah, there's some commonalities and still some red flags to look out for.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned earlier, or you spoke about outing someone in a relationship. Is that transferable in the schoolyard or at work and in friendships and relationships that aren't intimate or family relationships? And what does that look like?
I mean, definitely in terms of the impact on oneself, no matter who outs you, like there's still going to be an impact from that. I think there's something to be said here around then what it means to be a good ally, you know, because it's so important to not be outing someone, you know. And I think when you come out to someone, you are giving someone information that they can use against you. It's actually it's really scary that they can actually weaponize that against you, even a friend. So I think when you receive that, it's about realizing that's actually a privilege that you have that information. Yeah.
So, you know, I think one of the key aspects of being a really good ally is just recognizing that this is not yours to bandy around the world. Like, you need consent to share, you need consent from that person about what do you want this to look like? Do you want to be loud and celebrate and you feel like you're safe and comfortable to do that? Or is this something that you want me to take a back seat, continue on with our friendship as normal? And I think some people get very caught up in that with the best of intentions. I want them to live their life. I want them to, you know, live the best version of their life and be out and be comfortable and be proud of who they are. But that's not your decision to make. We actually need to take the back seat and go, how would you like this to look? This is yours to share. And it's really easy to explicitly like ask about getting that consent and talk about, you know, and just validate, like, thank you for sharing that with me, and sitting that really humble space of, look, this is a big part of yourself that you have felt comfortable sharing with me as a friend or as an ally or as a partner. You really got to respect that. It's a big step.
And I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, gender transition, of having that conversation of, if someone misgenders you, do you want me to correct them? Is that what you want me to do as a friend in this space? Or do you want to be the one that corrects them? If you're not in the room, do you want me to still correct them? Like, what would you want? What do you want me to do in this space? I'm happy to be your champion. Or do you prefer to be not out with certain people? Do you want to use certain pronouns with this group of people and certain pronouns with that group of people? It might be with your family, you use one set. With your friends at school, you use another set. And, you know, and making sure that as a friend, you support that decision and don't undermine that identity or what they're going through. But often that decision is often made for safety. And so what your role is there is to support that safety plan.
Don't assume. That's probably the best rule of thumb. Do not assume. Have an open conversation about it, because people assume for the best of reasons. You know, it isn't necessarily a really nasty thing to do. You want to help wave that rainbow flag or whatever's going to show your solidarity and your support, but do not assume that that is what that person really wants and needs from you right now. Assume that you need to ask.
From what I can gather, that that identity is something that's deeply personal for the person, and as a supportive friend, don't assume, communicate with them, talk to them how they want that to be identified to the world and how you can support that. And it's very case by case, it sounds like.
And sometimes you need to process it yourself as well. And, you know, if you've got a friend that's going through something, so maybe even having that question, you know, is there someone that you feel comfortable with me talking about this with someone, you know, because I think you don't want to have to process this with the person.
No.
Like, don't put that burden on them. But that's not to say that, you know, this doesn't affect other people in their lives. So are you happy with me talking about it with my parents? Are you happy with me talking about it with the school counsellor? You know, is there a friend that I can talk to about this? as Sophie said, like just have the open conversation.
Yeah.
Like it's awkward, but like it's more awkward to hurt each other.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, so,
Yeah.
and then having to go through that.
Yeah.
So like, it's better to have the conversation first of like, I don't want to screw this up. Who can I talk to? Who don't you want me to talk to?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you want me to be the best ally I can be in this space, you know?
Yeah. We really want to thank you guys for coming through and sharing some insight with us. Anything you want to say, Ella?
I am just really grateful and thankful that we got to sit down with the both of you today, and I know that I've learnt quite a lot, and I know that our viewers will be the same, grateful and thankful that we've had the opportunity to sit down with two professionals and people in the sector,
Thanks for having us,
and we just
Thank
want to
you.
thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.